Senator from West Virginia.
First of all, I agree with my friend wholeheartedly. We're asking for a repair. It doesn't make any sense at all to go down the path of repealing until we make an effort to make this better and protect the people that are depending on us. So with that, I would say that let's see what happens, but we're all willing to sit down and work, I think, on both sides of the aisle to improve it. But Mr. President, I rise today because of the crisis we have in our country is opiate addictions, prescription drug. My state, your wonderful state of Alaska, state of West Virginia, and every other state in the union, we have the highest overdose death rates in the nation due to prescription drug abuse. Reported just in 2016, we report 818 overdose deaths, and that's 4 times the number that occurred in 2001, and a nearly 13% increase just from 2015 when it was about 607. We lost more than 700 West Virginians dying from an opiate overdose last year, and 42,000 people in West Virginia, including 4,000 youth, sought treatment for illegal drug use, but they failed to receive it. There's no place for them to go, and you and I have spoken about this, and I appreciate your willingness and openness to look at how do we cure that, and we have a bill called the Lifeboat Act, which you've been so graciously looking at. And it's something, sir, I believe that will give us the funding mechanism, and it won't be a hardship. And it also gives exemptions from people who have chronic pain from cancer and all the chronic illnesses that are out there. But just basically the opioid drugs that are sold on a day-to-day basis by the millions and millions, it's a 1 penny revenue source, 1 penny per milligram. That will give us the funding mechanism that we need in order to continue to have expanded services for addiction. Myself, I've been involved in public service for quite some time, and 20 years ago, I would have thought anybody that's full with drugs, whether it's prescription, legal prescription, or illicit drugs, would be a criminal act and should go to jail for it. Well, we put people for consumption in jail for the last 20 years and haven't cured one. So I've come to the conclusion, basically, and looking and talking to the experts after we've had 2 decades of evaluating this, that it's an illness, and an illness needs treatment, and we don't have the treatment centers. So we're letting people go untreated, and that is basically sinful in this country. 2.1 million Americans abuse or are dependent on opiates. 2.1 million. I think they get the scope of how bad this system, the situation is in this epidemic. When you think over 200,000 people have died since 2000. 200,000. Any other catastrophic cause of death in this country would be a pandemic of proportion. And we would do whatever it costs in order to get the National Institute of Health to find out a cure. We would. But with this, we've kind of sat back idly. According to the CDC, 3 out of 4 new heroin users abuse prescription opiates before moving to heroin. There's a segue as far as going on, that people move right into tougher and more strong and powerful drugs. Heroin use has more than doubled among young adults in ages 18 to 25 in the past decade. 45% of the people who used heroin were also addicted to prescription opiate painkillers. Between 2009 and 2013, only 22% of Americans suffering from opiate addiction participated in any form of addiction treatment. You know, when you think about the enormity of this epidemic, United States of America, our great country, makes up about 4.6% of the world population. Yet we consume 80% of all opiates produced and consumed in the world. How did it happen? How did this, I mean, you and I grew up at a time when this wasn't prevalent, but how did it happen, Senator? I don't know, Mr. President, but I can tell you one thing, we've got to cure it. It's ravishing and destroying every part of this great country. We're taking so many productive people out of the workforce because they're addicted. If you talk to your police and for law enforcement anywhere in this country, they'll tell you 80 to 90% of all of the calls that they make in the form of justice is due to opiate or drug use. It's horrible what it's costing us in real time and real dollars and real people's lives. There's another bill I have out too, and it's, I call it Last Chance. And it really deals with this. If we know we have a problem, we've got people that we don't have in the workforce because three things keep you out of the workforce. You're either addicted or convicted or a lack of skills. You have an addiction, you've been convicted and have a crime, and so you have a record, or you have a lack of skills or a combination of those threes. I can tell you that the addiction and conviction usually goes hand in hand. People that are addicted, you'll find out that have a larceny, maybe even a felony on their record. And it's so hard for them to get back into the workforce. And if you get them into a treatment center, there's no carrot to say, stick with this because you're going to be clean. Now, that's a lot of fortitude a person would take in order to stay with a program when they have such an addiction and a craving. But if they know at the end of that 1 year treatment center, there was a chance for them to expunge their record. If it wasn't a violent crime, it wasn't a sexual crime, but it was probably a larceny, grand larceny probably, because usually they'll steal from their family, and then once the family gets tough with them, they'll steal from any type of extended family, then they'll steal from the neighborhood or anywhere they can get the money to support their habit. What my bill says, after 1 year of a certified treatment program that they've completed, another year of mentoring, helping other people to get off and stay off and maybe not start, then they're able to, with their sponsors, people that says, yes, they've completed this program, yes, they've mentored for 1 year, they can go before the arresting officers and the sentencing judge to go before them to see if they can get that expunged to give them a clean start. So it's a clean start. I call it Last Chance, but the official thing is called Clean Start. One time to get this workforce back in America producing again. Because if not, the only thing they have waiting for them is a minimum wage job. And the skill sets most of them have are going to go unused and unproductive. So these are things that we're working on. But when you look at the misuse and abuse of opiates and what it costs our country, think about this. This is in 2013. You can only imagine what it is, but the last figures I have, that's estimated $78.5 billion. $78.5 billion. That's medical cost and criminal justice cost. In 2013, $78 billion. It's cost our country. So we're paying for it. You know, it's like pay me now or pay me later. We're paying for it. That 1 penny on every milligram of opiates that's produced and consumed in this country would raise about $1.5 to $2 billion a year. I would hope it would raise none, but it would raise that much because of the amount of consumption we have. We consume 80% of all the world opiates. So with that, we can start putting treatment centers and curing people. For the past year, I've been coming to the Senate floor to read letters from West Virginians and those struggling all throughout our country with opiate abuse, Mr. President. These letters have a common theme. They all mention how hard it is to get themselves or their loved one into treatment. Sometimes it takes months and sometimes it never happens. Most of the time it never happens. This problem stems from our lack of a system to help those who are looking to help. We need permanent funding, and we talked about that. So that's why I've introduced my lifeboat. And today I'm going to read a letter from a mother from West Virginia. No different than a mother from Alaska, I can assure you, who lost her daughter to drug abuse after she struggled to get her into treatment facilities she desperately needed. This is Leigh Wilson's story. On behalf of the families who have lost their children to addiction, I ask that any health law reforms contain a serious effort to ensure effective addiction treatment for all who need it, whatever it takes. Just yesterday, the Boston Globe published a special report about my daughter, Leigh Taylor. Her name was Taylor Leigh Wilson. The daughter's name was Taylor Leigh Wilson. That's Leanne's daughter. My youngest child was one of the West Virginians' promising young people. A former Girl Scout, she was a Cabell Midland High School graduate, a Marshall student who wanted to turn her love of books into a career as a librarian. But drugs destroyed her life despite her willingness and months of effort to get treatment. Taylor's overdose was the first. You have to listen to this. You're just not going to believe what happened in Huntington, West Virginia on this day. Taylor's overdose was the first of 28 that were reported in Huntington in a span of 5 hours. 5 hours. 28 overdoses on August 15, 2016. The horror of that afternoon made national news. Then the reporters left. Our nightmare, though, was just beginning. Taylor and I would spend the next 41 days trying to get help. We drove door to door in search of inpatient treatment beds to isolate her from the heroin world. All we found were waiting lists, out-of-state centers that wouldn't take West Virginia Medicaid, and doctors who discouraged Taylor from inpatient treatment, saying she could do without it. Then Taylor put her name on Prostera's waiting list for Suboxone, a drug proven to reduce withdrawal symptoms. No one told her how long she might have to wait, though evidence suggests that the combination of counseling and prescription drugs to reduce craving can be very effective. Our lawmakers have restricted the availability of this medication. On September 28, 2016, Prostera Center called to inform me that Taylor had been accepted in a Suboxone program. Now that's September the 28th, and as I told you, this happened on August 15th. So September 28th, Prostera called to inform me that Taylor had been accepted in a Suboxone program. I had to tell them that she had overdosed and died 3 days before. The next February, I got a call from Prostera, Pinecrest, following up on Taylor's application for recovery housing and to see if she was still interested. Before she passed away, Taylor herself told the Boston Globe reporter that the real story that needs to be told is why there are no treatment beds when our state has a crisis epidemic. Your state, my state, almost every state in America has this. Why must it be so hard to get addiction treatment in the state with the nation's highest drug death rate? 818 deaths last year alone, most of them from legal prescription drugs. Think about how this epidemic has gotten to this proportion. We have a drug that's put on the market by the FDA. This is an organization, a federal agency, that's supposed to make sure that we have, for consumption, a safety net built into it. So the FDA puts their stamp of approval. This is a product that can be used, and it should be of help. Then it goes to the DEA to find out who's allowed to dispense it, without any type of education or any type of work to make sure that there's competency in our doctors who are prescribing, or I might say over-prescribing. Then it goes to a doctor who is the most trusted person outside of our family that says, this is going to help you. This is good for you, okay. Now this is what we're talking about, what's killing West Virginians and Americans every day. If you needed heart surgery and had insurance providers around the state would compete for your care. And that's what she's saying. There's someone there in any other treatment or any other need for treatment of any illness, we can find help. But not this. This has been such a silent killer that I know, and my family included, every one of us that I talk to, anybody that I talk to knows somebody in their immediate family, extended family, or a close friend has been affected. All of our young interns right here know the same. They know people. But yet we keep it quiet, especially if it's in our family, we keep quiet because it's embarrassing. We don't want anybody to know that we have failed as a family structure. Something fell apart for this to happen. Why would someone have to turn to drugs when they've got a loving, caring family? We just didn't understand. So we kept quiet about it. And it wasn't a Democrat or Republican, a liberal or conservative cause. This is a killer that goes, it has no boundaries. It attacks everybody. And that's why I'm saying, when you see a mother that's doing everything she can to get her daughter somewhere just to save her life and can't get her in. And we're talking about, well, this 1 penny. I said, what's a 1 penny tax, Joe? I can't vote for any new taxes. I said, I'm not asking you to vote for a tax. I'm asking you to look at any of your constituents in the eye and says, we have a program that's life-saving for you or your family member. God forbid if you ever need it. We have it. And what I've said is, we didn't hesitate to put taxes on cigarettes. Didn't hesitate. Everybody voted for taxes on cigarettes. Everybody has voted for taxes on alcohol. I'm asking for 1 penny to save thousands and thousands of lives in America. And I'll guarantee you there won't be one person vote against a Republican or a Democrat that would vote for something that's going to put a permanent funding that puts treatment centers in the most needed areas of America and saves people's lives. There aren't enough resources to accommodate the addiction problem in the heroin capital of the U.S. Taylor herself told the reporter, if no one changes, this whole city will go under. Now let me tell you in the city of Huntington what they're doing right now. I've met with them last week when I was home. They're going to have a center of excellence started with Marshall University, the city of Huntington, Cabell County, the entire organization, all the policymakers are working together because this is something they're fighting every day. This center of excellence is built around this. We know we have a problem. We've got people overdosing. We're trying to save lives. We're trying to get them clean. We're trying to get them back into the workforce. Center of excellence is going to start at conception for a mother that may be using, that conceives a child at conception. How do we get her clean? How does she have a healthy baby versus a drug-addicted baby? We have Lily's Place down there, which is unbelievable what they're doing in neonatal. They're trying to get this baby weaned off of the addiction that the mother passed on through her pregnancy. And then we got to make sure that that mother goes back home and that baby goes with her in a clean home. Because if not, we're just continuing the cycle. This is what this Center of Excellence is going to do. And the success we think we're going to have, starting at ground zero, Huntington, West Virginia, will be able to be shared all over the country. Because it's going to take a holistic approach. You just can't say, I'm going to treat the effects of the addict. I'm going to treat the cause. It goes further than that. These children being born by a drug-infested mother and a father or a person, a paternal, or into a family that's still drug-infested, does nothing but perpetuate the cycle. This is what we have to stop. If you want to save the country, and here's what I tell children, I'll tell all of our young interns. I go to schools and talk every day. And every day I get a chance. And I say, there's not another country that can take on the United States of America militarily. No one compares with the greatest military the world has ever known. History has ever recorded, the United States of America. That's not going to happen. It's not going to happen. Nobody can take on this great economy of ours. The greatest economy in the world, 19 trillion, almost $20 trillion GDP. Closest we've got to us is China, about half of that, 10 and a half, 11 trillion. Then she drops off the scale with Japan and then Russia. Russia's 2.5, 3 trillion. No one compares to the United States of America for the economy and the military might we have. And the superpower, the only superpower left in the world, United States of America. The hope of the world, United States of America. And I tell them, I says, they don't think they have to. They don't have to fight you. They don't have to try to take over your economy. They think that you'll give it to them. They think that you'll give it to them because you have a lack of skill sets. Your education attainment is not as high as what they're achieving today. Your addiction, you won't be clean enough to be able to perform. So they're just going to sit back and wait. Time is on their side. They can sit back and wait for you to turn it over. And you might be the last generation that lives in the superpower of the United States of America. God, I hope that doesn't happen. But we've got to fight this. We just can't continue to keep talking about it. We've got good pieces of legislation. Jesse's Law, I've got a bill. Think about this. I introduced this bill a year ago. It's from Jessie Grubb. Her mom and dad, her dad served in the state legislature with me. And we've been friends for a long time. Jessie was 30 years old, a promising young girl. She got sexually molested when she was in college, came home, hid it from her, was depressed, got started on, they gave her some pain pills, some drugs, suppressants so she could cope with it. She got addicted. She overdosed a few times. She was trying to cure. She was 30 years old. She'd gone to Michigan. She was in treatment. She was doing right. She'd been clean for 6 months. She was a runner, an athlete. She was going to do her first marathon. And she had a hip injury, so she went into the hospital. When she went to the hospital, her mom and dad went up there. So here's the mom and dad. Here's the girl. They go into admissions. They said, please, I want you all to know, I am so proud. I'm a recovering addict. I'm 6 months clean. I want you to make sure that you all know that. Okay? The parents reiterated it. She goes into this. There's no laws now. Nothing. Now, they ask you all different types of questions. Are you allergic to this? Penicillin, whatever it may be, making sure that your charts are marked, right? So that someone doesn't, basically another tending physician or another tending nurse or a night shift or whatever looks and says, oh, I can't do that because it says you're allergic to that, or I shouldn't be giving you this because of your condition. She goes in, she gets treated, and she has an infection. They want to treat the infection, so they put a port in to treat the infection, because that will have the home nurse to come in and treat with that. The discharging physician did not know that she was a recovering addict. So he thinks a healthy young lady with an injury, that she was going to have pain, so he should subscribe her some pain medication. He subscribed her Oxycontin, 50 Oxycontin. That was in the afternoon. She was discharged. She had overdosed and died by 1 o'clock in the morning. Now, Jesse's Law basically says this, Mr. President, and I've tried to get this, and I said, if the guardian or the parent and if the patient both come in and identify their problem, and they want you to mark their charts accordingly, that should be done. Pretty simple, right? Let me tell you what happened. For 1 year, it's been stalled because of the privacy, HIPAA, privacy laws. I have all this going on. So 1 year's up, and I called David Grubb, and they wrote me a letter and said, do you think anything will ever happen? So we go back again and start working, and here's what we do to change it. I said, David, we're going to have to take the parents or the guardians off of it. If the patient themselves asked for that, free and willingly asked for that, we think that will pass the mustard, and all the different interest groups out there that are so concerned will basically accept that. So we have that piece of legislation called Jesse's Law. God forbid, Mr. President, if you have a constituent or a loved one and it's not known, that you can lose that child like that, just like that. So these are all things that we're dealing after the effects of addiction. Huntington, West Virginia, Marshall University is going to take in an effort that I think is heroic. How do we start at the beginning, conception, and make sure that child doesn't grow up to be addicted, and make sure that family can get clean enough to make sure that child, you have a responsibility for that child not to see and not to be in an addicted environment. That's what we're trying to cure. And we are at ground zero. And I'm just hopeful for this great country and this new generation that we're counting on, that they can keep themselves clean and they will still continue to be the hope of the world, because they truly are. So with that, Mr. President, I notice the absence of a quorum.
Clerk will call.